Hi guys. So this will be part 3 of the Hobbes lecture. So we'll start going through the actual text by Hobbes. So then turn to page 36 in our textbook. And since I've given you quite a bit of the background thus far, I'll go through this. Well, I will attempt to go through it somewhat more quickly, although that probably will not occur. But I'll try. So, go in our notes on modules and scroll down to the, page 2 of the notes. Yeah. Where I start out saying men are all basically equal. And I note, and I've said this before, but he's talking about only actual male adults. Human children of either sex and women are always possessions. So this war that occurs in the state of nature only truly occurs between male adults. So keep that in mind. Now, the first thing that he starts out with on page 36, as he says, "Nature hath made men so equal in the faculties of body and mind, is that though there be found one man, sometimes stronger in body, or of quicker mind than another, yet when all is reckoned together, the difference between man and man is not so considerable." So he's saying here that men are all basically equal. There are some guys with bigger muscles, and there are some guys who are a little more clever, a little quicker, who have a higher IQ than other guys. But when taken all together, they're basically equal. Here's why. Look at my notes here. As I say, they're equal in body. Even if one man is small and weak, he can take down the bigger man. It doesn't matter how skinny or scrawny you may be. There's a way that you can find to take down the bigger man in the state of nature. Here are 2 ways that Hobbes specifically mentions. You can team up with other men to kill the stronger one. Of course, that team, when you team up in the state of nature, it is only for the short amount of time that is required to accomplish your end goal, in this case, taking down the bigger man. As soon as he's done, you're back to being enemies. There are no friends in the state of nature. There are no teams in the state of nature. You are always at war with other men. You can team up for a short time, take down a bigger foe, but then you become enemies again. Or you can take him down by, as he says in here at the bottom of that first paragraph on page 36, by secret machination. You can use stealth, poison his drink, get him when he's sleeping. It doesn't matter how scrawny and small you are. You can kill a huge man by using strategy, by using stealth. So no matter what happens, you can always find a way to survive in the state of nature. This is important. Then the second point, that men are all basically equal in mind. And I've put the quote in here, "Prudence is but experience, which equal time equally bestows on all men." This is important. The way that he defines strength of mind or intelligence is not IQ. You don't have to be Galileo or Shakespeare or Einstein or Darwin or somebody who is Stephen Hawking, who is absurdly intelligent, genius level IQ, in order to survive in the state of nature. In fact, sometimes having IQs like that could be a real hindrance in the state of nature, because you're thinking too deeply about things when really all that you need to think about is what your experience has shown you if you indeed survive until you're 20 years old in the state of nature. And what experience shows you are a couple of just basic things. You shouldn't have friends. You shouldn't trust anybody. You shouldn't share. You should get more and more power. And you need to, most importantly, strike first. You always need to strike first in the state of nature, because every man is like you, and he's thinking the same things that you're thinking. He's thinking, if I take this guy down, I will be that much more equipped to survive. You're thinking that, and he's thinking that, and you know that because you know that that guy is just like you. He's no different than you. He cares about his survival. He's going to figure out eventually that you also are thinking about your survival. And he's therefore thinking, I better take this guy down. So you need to be thinking about him thinking that and take him down first. You have to strike first in the state of nature. So when in this quote, when he says prudence is but experience, to do what's prudent is to do what's practical or commonsensical or wise or whatever, what makes the most sense in a situation. So it's experience. If a guy is 30 years old, it doesn't matter. You take 27, 30-year-olds. They will not all have the same IQ, and they can be even vastly different in that, but they will have the same basic experience. They will all have had parents, and they will all have had lovers, and they will all have had a traffic ticket and had to pay rent and had to have a job and whatever. They will all have, when you get down to it, the same basic experience, which affords them the same basic common sense. And in the state of nature, we don't even have things like jobs and lovers and relationships and things that are that complex. All you have is survival, and that's what everybody has, just figuring out how to not be killed. So everybody will kind of just look for food and water and will be alert against enemies. And so it doesn't really matter how smart you are in the state of nature. It just matters kind of how old you are and how much you've been through. And everybody of the same basic age will have been through the same stuff and the same amount of it. So in the state of nature, in terms of mind, in terms of intelligence or intellectual ability to survive, every guy is pretty much equal. Now, as I say here, this is important, and Hobbes doesn't explain this, but this is part of his philosophical position that you need to understand. If there were no equality in the state of nature, there would be no state of nature. The state of nature cannot exist if men are, by nature, unequal. If one or a couple of guys were just naturally superior, completely through and through, better than all the other guys, they would sort of naturally take charge, and other guys, for the most part, would naturally realize, you know what, I'm not even going to bother screwing with this guy. He's going to get me. He's way better than I am. I'm not even going to try to fight him because I know I'm going to lose. Instead, I'm just going to follow him. So if guys knew that they were unequal, then they would sort of naturally move themselves into these levels where some guys would just naturally lead and other guys would naturally follow. But that doesn't ever happen because everybody is basically equal. But even more than being equal, because of course there are guys who are naturally more equipped to lead or strategize or physically best you in a fight. But what is superbly equal between all men is arrogance. They all have a big fat head. All men are arrogant in the state of nature. At least that much. And they all think and believe very deeply that they have this real opportunity to win in a fight. In an intellectual fight, in a physical fight, they'll find a way to win. And in this regard, all men are absolutely equal. They're all arrogant idiots. So what they will do, note women, that this does not say anything about you. What they will do in a fight is not back down. Why would they back down when they think that indeed they can find a way? It doesn't matter how much taller the guy is, how much bigger, how much more stuff he has. A man will still think that he can win in the fight. He will find a way. He will get a weapon. He will get other men on his side. He will do whatever he needs to do, but he will be vindicated somehow. So if you really think that, you're not going to back down. So in the state of nature, because men all think that, nobody backs down from a fight. And since nobody backs down from a fight, and there are constant fights, because, as Hobbes says, we come upon things that we cannot share. A woman, or food, or whatever. There are all kinds of things that we can't share. And if we can't share them, we will fight to own them. And since nobody backs down from a fight, there will just be constant fighting. So I put up this quote. It's at the very bottom of 36, the last paragraph that's starting on the left-hand column. From this equality of ability arises equality of hope in the attaining of our ends, our end goals, survival. And therefore, if any two men desire the same thing, which nevertheless they cannot both enjoy, they become enemies. And in the way to their end, which is principally their own conservation, their own survival, and sometimes their delectational, endeavor to destroy or subdue one another. So when we come upon something that we both want, but we know we can't both have, we will fight to have control of it. And I'm not just fighting to knock you down and then take the stuff and run away. I'm fighting to completely subdue you. The best way to survive is not to knock you down, grab the stuff, and run. Because won't you just come after me? Or have a vendetta against me then? You'll hunt me down. You'll find me. I need to completely subdue you to begin with so that nothing happens in the future. I've got to strike first. I've got to kill you or take you as a slave, which is actually always better. You always want to take a man as a slave before you kill him. Otherwise, you'll come after me. So in some way, I need to dominate you entirely so that in the future, you never come after me again. Which means there's constant fighting, nobody backs down, and that the way that they fight is not just to give a guy a good couple of punches, but your end goal in fighting is to kill the person or subdue him so completely that he becomes your slave. That's pretty intense fighting. I mean, even stupid guys who get in a bar brawl don't fight like that. Some of them do, I guess, but they don't fight to take the other guy as his slave forevermore. That's insane. We don't do that. We fight to protect or people fight to protect their honor or their pride or some garbage. But in the state of nature, you fight to the death or to keep someone as a slave. But this would not happen. You have to remember this. This is important in your papers. If you're going to write on what the state of nature is, you have to explain why men are all equal. The state of nature would not occur if men were not equal. You have to say that. You have to explain it. They're equal in both body and mind. How are they equal in body? How are they equal in mind? And why does that mean that they will always fight? Why would it be different if they were not equal? What would happen instead? Why does equality, by necessity, lead to war? You must be able to say that in your papers, okay? So, keep that in mind. Now, okay, so I put in this quote. Where is it? oh, right after where I was reading, on the top of the right-hand column, page 36. And from hence it comes to pass that where an invader has no more to fear than another man's single power, others may probably be expected to come prepared with forces united to dispossess and deprive him not only of the fruit of his labor, of his stuff, but also of his life, or liberty, freedom. So, I don't have anything to fear in the state of nature. If I go to attack you, there's nothing for me to fear other than you attacking me back. I don't have to fear the government. I don't have to fear God, because there is no notion of God or religion or any of that in the state of nature. Nobody thinks about that stuff. Nobody believes in it. Nobody cares about it. There's no moral system in the state of nature. So I don't have to worry about anything other than you and what you could potentially do to me if I come and attack you in the state of nature. So in this case, since all I have to worry about is you, and I'm an egotistical man, and I know I can take you down, I can find a way to take you down, I'm not going to back down from a fight. And I know that you've got a couple of new wives, and my wives are getting a little old, and you've got more apples than I do, and I want some more apples. So why am I not going to come and try to take you down and steal all your stuff and either kill you or take you as a slave? There isn't a reason. There is no reason why I would not. So it can be expected in the state of nature, where there's nothing else to fear but you, that I will come after you. There's no reason for me not to. In fact, there is only good reason for me to come after you. Let's look at the next section here. I'll say something about that later. Okay. The next paragraph. Let's see. Look in the middle of it. There's nowhere to... Okay, so the next paragraph, 8 lines up from the bottom of it, in the middle, I'm just going to start reading. If others that would otherwise be glad to be at ease within modest bounds should not, by invasion, increase their power, they would not be able for a very long time, by standing only on their defense, to subsist. So, if I am okay, if I am at ease within modest bounds, if I see you and you have all this stuff, wives and apples, and I don't have that much, but I have a wife, maybe 2, I have a couple bushels of apples, and I see that you have, 9 wives and 27 bushels of apples and several slaves and a bunch of kids, and you have all this stuff. If I say, you know what, I don't need all that stuff. I can live just fine on this. I'm okay. I'm a minimalist, right? I don't want to clutter my life with all this stuff. If I say that, I will not for a very long time be able to live, because you are going to see me and want to take my stuff, inevitably. All men realize that they can get what they want if they put their minds to it somehow. So, someone is going to see me and want to take my stuff. So if I don't have a lot of it, if I only have a couple of bushels of apples and you come and take my stuff, then I have nothing left after you take my stuff. Or I only have 1 bushel of apples left, or whatever. So the best thing to do is to have 30 bushels of apples, that if you come and take a few, I'll still have plenty left. So in the state of nature, it does not work. It does not work to be a minimalist. It does not work to not want to get more and more and more stuff. Because the more stuff you have, as Hobbes sees it, the more likely you are to survive. And of course, every man knows this, and he knows that everybody else knows it. So the result then is this diffidence. Now make sure you know what the definition of diffidence is. The one that Hobbes is using, there are a couple, if you were to look it up on like dictionary.com or something, there are a couple of definitions, and the one that Hobbes is using is mistrust. You do not trust other people. So, since I know that all men are like me, and they realize all these things, they realize that they need to get as much stuff as possible, they realize that they're equal to me, that they can get whatever they want, and they know that I also think that, they're going to strike first. Because they know that I'm thinking all of this stuff, and I'm thinking that, okay, well, the most reasonable option then is to strike first. So, they're going to be thinking that. They're going to try to strike first. So, as he says in that first full paragraph on the right-hand column, from this diffidence of one another, mistrust of one another, there is no way for any man to secure himself, that is, survive. So reasonable, there's no reasonable way for any man to survive as anticipation. That is, what he means by anticipation here is, by force or wiles, cunning, trickery, to master the persons of all men he can, so long until he sees no other power great enough to endanger him. The best way to survive is to master everybody else for as long as you can, as often as you can, until you see that there's nobody left who can endanger your life. In other words, to strike first and take everybody down, take everybody out before they can take you out. Striking first is the cardinal rule in the state of nature. You have to kill or enslave everybody before they can do it to you. And they will try to do it to you because they are all equal to you, and they absolutely believe and legitimately are capable of taking you down. No matter how awesome you are, they will find a way. So you better do it first. Okay? No. The next portion I say, and this is from the second full paragraph on the right-hand column. Again, men have no pleasure, but on the contrary, a great deal of grief, in keeping company where there's no power able to overawe them all. He's talking about the sovereign, the power that's able to overawe them all. When there's no sovereign, there's no government, there's no system of rules or morality, men have no happiness in keeping company. In other words, men have no friendships. There are no friendships in the state of nature. Your wife, your slaves, your children are all possessions. They are not friends. They are not comrades. You do not confide in your wife. They are only possessions. You have no friends. You can team up to take down a greater foe, but you do not stay teamed up. Why? Because eventually that guy will realize that you have stuff that he could use to ensure his own survival. And all friends of any kind will eventually betray one another. So there are no friendships in the state of nature. As he says at the bottom, and I put this in my notes, in the middle of that paragraph, I'm sorry. Go 5 more lines into that paragraph. Upon all signs of contempt or undervaluing, a man naturally endeavors, as far as he dares, go 3 lines down, to extort a greater value from his contemners by domage, from the others by the example. So if you see that a man is not valuing you in the way, because you're egotistical, as all men are in the state of nature, if you see that another man is not valuing you and doesn't think that you're so great and amazing and strong and all these things, then what you'll do is you will extort, you will take, you will steal from him, you will force from him his value of you. You will force him to value you by dominating him, by taking him as a slave, beating him down, killing him, whatever you need to do, humiliate him. And then you will illustrate an example to the other people who just watch it, the other men who don't value you. They'll say, whoa, look what he did to that guy. I value him very much. I'm not going to mess with this guy. He's very brutal. So you will take that value if other men don't value you. And this is not what friends do to each other, not true, deep friends. They value each other, and they don't need to, or they shouldn't need to force that value out of each other. They should just do it automatically, because that's why we're friends with somebody, because we really think well of them. But in the state of nature, nobody does that. They think well of themselves and of nobody else, even though every man truly is equal. They don't want to believe that. And if they did, by the way, if they all believed that they were equal, then they wouldn't necessarily fight then either. Because if I know that everybody else has an equal opportunity, not necessarily a superior, but an equal opportunity to take me down, I'm still not going to fight. All men are equal, but they all think that each man thinks that he is better than all the rest. It's just not true. He's just not better than all the rest. He's just an egotist. He just has a big fat head. But that creates war. That doesn't sound very different from today. The different nations that go to war. I have a sneaking suspicion all of these people have some problems with their egos. I think Hobbes may have known what he was talking about. So the next small, tiny little paragraph is where he just mentions, the 3 causes of quarrel. And remember, that's a paper topic, and the 3 causes are competition, diffidence, and glory. And then he goes on to say something about each one of them in the next paragraph. There's still not that much, but you can say a lot in your paper on it, and I expect you to say a decent amount. And I've written things here. So the first one, competition. As he says, men invade for gain. In this paragraph, if you write on this, you have to define power. We don't really think of power in this way, but for Hobbes, power is anything that will keep you alive. So, he lists wives, the masters of other men's persons, that is, their bodies. So, slaves. You become the master of a person's body. You control his body, what he does, which means you make him a slave. Wives, children, and cattle. So you take control of women, of children, other men, you make them your slave, and cattle, their stuff. Okay, apples, food, water, whatever. So the more stuff you get, the better off you are, because when people come to take you down and they take some of your apples, some of your cattle, some of your wives, they can't possibly take it all in one trip. So you'll have some left over, and you'll still be able to survive. Okay? Let's see, as I say, anyway, everything that I say under number 1, competition, you would need to be able to explain thoroughly. Number 2, diffidence. Make sure you define it. It means mistrust. We have mistrust because we know that all men are like us. And if we are thinking about our own survival, so are they. And if I am thinking his stuff would allow me to better survive, that other guy is thinking that too. Which means that I don't trust him because I know he's just like me and he is willing to do anything for his survival because I know that I'm willing to do anything for my survival. So I can't trust him because I know that he'd be willing then to kill me for his survival, just as I'm willing to kill him for his survival, for my survival. So I don't trust anybody in the state of nature. ever. I don't even trust my wives, my children, my slaves, because God only knows what they could try to do to me. I just have to keep them down, keep them under my thumb. So, as he says, men invade for safety. I must eliminate all enemies before they come at me. So, in this second cause of quarrel, you have to say something about striking first. Diffidence means that you will strike first. You have to say something about that. If you do not say something about striking first in the section on diffidence, I will grade you down on your paper. You have to say something about striking first. It is the greatest consequence of diffidence. It is the greatest consequence of mistrust. I do not trust anybody. I know they're thinking what I'm thinking. They're thinking about taking me down, so the only rational solution is to anticipate that, to take them down first, by force or wiles, to master the persons of all men he can, so long till he see no other power great enough to endanger him. That means striking first. You anticipate, you strike first. That happens because I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody because I know they're just like me, and I'm thinking about my own survival over everything else, so I know they're thinking the same. I'm thinking of killing them. I know they're thinking of killing me. If that's the case, I need to kill first. Strike first. Okay? Then glory, as he says, the third for trifles, as a word, a smile, a different opinion, any other sign of undervalue, etc., etc. So glory, as I say, is a form of power. If I have taken down so many guys and I'm really brutal to them and so forth, I can intimidate, by example, other men. And if I have this reputation for being a very brutal and strong killer, more guys are going to just kind of leave me alone. They're not even going to bother trying to deal with me. They're just going to run away. So the more glory I have, the better reputation, the more likely it is that guys will let me be. Thus, I'm more likely to survive if guys are leaving me alone. Okay? Now, as he says, on page 37, left-hand column, second full paragraph. This is where he says that there's no human progress or culture during the time of war. Go 7 lines in. In such condition, there is no place for industry because the fruit is uncertain. There's no culture of the earth, no navigation, no use of the commodities imported by sea, no building, no instruments of moving, no knowledge of the face of the earth, no account of time, no arts, no society. There's nothing. There's nothing that even resembles human culture or progress in the state of nature, because everybody is too busy looking out for themselves, watching their backs, because someone is going to kill you. You don't have time to read Hobbes, to read philosophy, to think about morality or anything else, because you're way too worried that somebody is about to kill you. Philosophy, academia, almost everything, in fact, that we enjoy in this country, in the United States, is a luxury, because we don't live in a third world country or wherever where human beings, or even in inner city Chicago in the United States, where people are in a state of war, where all they can do is watch their backs to be sure that they're not killed or that their children aren't killed. I don't have to deal with that. That's why I get to do this, but especially as a woman. This is a great, extraordinary luxury. Philosophy, thinking, academia has, for centuries, been the domain of the financial elite. People who were at the top, so they didn't have to worry about mere brute survival. They had that all taken care of, so they could worry about other things. Think here about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you've ever heard of that. Now, the next thing, as he says, this is the last paragraph that's beginning on page 37, left-hand column. It may seem strange to some man who has not well weighed these things that nature should thus disassociate and render men apt to invade and destroy one another. So he's saying, look, if you don't believe me, just look around. We're in a civil society. We're not even in a state of nature. You don't have to watch your back all the time. You go to Walmart, or you do whatever you do. You get in your car, you walk down the street, you go jogging, you go to the gym, you go to school, you go to a restaurant. And you don't standardly really watch your back. You are pretty much sure that nobody's going to take you down because we have rules, we have a society, we have a moral system, etc. But even in a society, as he says, when we travel, we go well armed. In Nevada, we have a what's that called? Concealed weapon law. You can carry a concealed weapon. Not all states have that, by the way. And people do. They carry weapons for whatever reason because they think that somebody's going to try to shoot them. I don't know why people can carry a weapon, but fine. Some people do that. And that just illustrates Hobbes' point that you don't trust anybody because you think that they're going to kill you. When we're even in our homes, even in my home, I lock things up. And I lock them up from my family, the other people with whom I live, the people I love. I lock things up. I have my chests and my drawers. I lock my doors at night. And when I travel, I go with mace or with a gun or whatever. And he says, look, if you don't think that men are as bad as I'm making them seem in the state of nature, and you're offended, and you think, oh, people would never act like this, people are good at heart, and so on and so forth, think about how you respond to other people, how distrustful you are of them in a civil society. You're not even in a state of nature, and you're scared of them. So think about if there were no government, no rules, no authority at all in any way. It would be every man out for himself, and by God, you'd be, 100 times as scared as you are here. You're even afraid of your own family, that they might get into your stuff. So you're damn sure that you'd be afraid of people in a state of nature. So, there's that. Now, as he says on the right-hand column on 37, the second full paragraph that starts, but though there had never been any time. He's pointing this out, by the way, because for the most part, this is a thought experiment. He doesn't really think that human beings started all of them out in a state of nature and so on. It's a thought experiment to make another point. But he says, yet in all times, kings and persons of sovereign authority, because of their independency, are in continual jealousies and in the posture of gladiators. All sovereign nations are always in a state of war, and it can only ever be that way. So the United States is in a state of peace. As a country, we are in a state of peace because we have a sovereign. We have a government, a political system, and we have rules and a moral system and all those things. But we can never not be in a state of war with Canada because we don't have the same government, we don't have the same sovereign, we don't have the same rules. And when you put two sovereigns together, the only way that they could not be in a state of war is if there's a guy above them. But there really isn't. We've tried to make the UN. It doesn't really work that well. And if you look into it, it doesn't really work that well. Sovereigns do not make what Hobbes calls a covenant with one another.